Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Sneakers and Cleats. Today it is April 15th, 2024. Don Harris, Chuck McAtenick alongside. I am your guest host, Zack Hedrick. Welcome in, everybody. Fellas.
What's up, Zack?
How are y'all? How was the weekend?
It was a lot of golf. Watched a lot of golf. It was a lot of
golf. Good golf, though.
Watching golf, not playing golf.
Yeah, watched a lot of golf. And hats off to anybody who shot under par all week.
Yeah, only 8 golfers. Only 8 golfers finished in red figures. So pretty tough test this weekend.
Times.
Mm-hmm.
But Scottie Scheffler, man.
Yeah.
As predicted right here.
You did.
You heard it here first.
You did. Well done.
Cash that bet.
Soothsayer.
Yeah. I finally got something right.
We'll get to the Masters a little bit later, but we're going to be talking a bunch of Spurs, NBA playoffs as the Spurs wrap up another season. We look ahead to what's next for this organization, of course, looking at the bright future. But we'll delve into some NBA playoffs ahead. We're also going to, take a little flavoring of the UTSA Spring Game. That happened this weekend. Of course, talking to Jeff Traylor, this spring transfer portal window opens tomorrow.
Yes.
Ooh. So get his thoughts on that, and then also we'll recap the Masters once again. But as always, we start with the number game, 92, in honor of episode 92. And, of course, it begins and ends with Mr. Reggie White.
Yeah, I don't think of anybody else.
The only other guy on there, Michael Strahan from kind of my generation growing up a little bit. But
that's a good one.
Another defensive end, stalwart up there. But Reggie White, man, wow, what a career.
Yeah, one of the greats of all time.
Quickly, any Reggie White stories that y'all have, Chuck? He's big
saved
Packers
the franchise. Yeah, it's when they were wallowing in the 70s and early 80s. It looked like they were doomed, and then the Packers decided they were going to go all in, gave them a ton of money to leave, but the general thinking at the time was nobody wanted to play in Green Bay. He did. Favre followed, and the rest is franchise history. But Reggie, I think, was at least the first guy that saved the Packers from leaving Green Bay and possibly moving to Milwaukee full time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but he came from the USFL, right?
He did.
He came from like the New Jersey Generals.
But he was really good with the Eagles, obviously, too, before he left.
Yeah.
But that was a huge signing. And, it's like I said, Reggie White probably saved the franchise from moving, but the reason why Lambeau Field is what it is today is probably because of Favre. So both very instrumental in Packer lore and will be forever.
If Lawrence Taylor is like the best defensive player maybe in the NFL, Reggie White would be right behind him at number 2, you would think.
He's
certainly up there. Yeah. These things are always hard to kind of measure, right? But just in terms of what he meant to the league and to a franchise, it's hard to find many other guys that are going to have that kind of legacy.
Everybody talks about Reggie White and Lawrence Taylor and Mike Singletary. The best defensive football player I've ever seen is Ed Reed. And I don't think he gets enough credit.
Yeah, just
because he played with Ray Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
I think when people think of those teams, they think of Ray Lewis.
Yeah,
I think Ed Reed was better than Ray Lewis.
Yeah.
Ed Reed was the best football. He scored more touchdowns from a defensive perspective than I think maybe anybody in history.
Not only a physical guy, but a mental, just captain as well. Just the way he played.
Stud.
Yeah. I remember hearing one of those mic'd up moments. Ed Reed's like, "Come on, we're playing Peyton Manning now. We gotta step it up."
Right.
So, also in 1992, to kind of flesh this out a little bit more with our number game, Redskins beat the Bills 37-24 in Super Bowl 26.
Don't remember it at all.
Duke beat Michigan for their second consecutive national championship.
Chris Webber timeout.
Yep. And then Fred Couples won his one and only major at the Masters in 92. Sweet swinging Freddie. And then Nick Price won the Texas Open. He was also the PGA Tour champ that year. So he had a good showing down here in San Antonio. And then, Chuck, your Toronto Blue Jays beat the Atlanta Braves in the World Series.
Yeah, they weren't my Toronto Blue Jays at the time, but yes. I was thinking that Redskins game. I think Ricky Sanders got hurt in that game. They still won. Scored a lot of points. That team was very dynamic.
Was that Blue Jays the Joe Carter?
No, that was against Philly. Who did that against Mitch Williams?
Okay. Then I don't remember this World Series.
Just remember that Braves team, those Braves teams of the 90s, right?
That they
Yeah.
were
They were
always in
there.
the mix.
That's right.
They were
there.
always in the mix.
10 World Series in a row or something.
So moving to our first topic, Spurs wrapping up another season, 22-60, same exact record as last year.
Which is a miracle. I didn't think they were going to get there.
They got there. I mean, it could have been 23 if maybe they closed out against the 76ers 1 week ago from yesterday. But Victor Wembanyama went out on a very high note. That thrilling comeback win against the NBA champs really kind of threw a wrench into Denver's top seed plans a little bit, which was fun. But quickly running through some stats, Victor Wembanyama, this is his rookie season, just statistically, played in 71 games, averaging almost 30 minutes, 29.7, 21.4 points, 10 rebounds, 3.6 blocks, which of course leads the league, and then 3.9 assists. Everybody was asking him, do you think you exceeded expectations? You had all these expectations going in. He kind of said, no, I didn't meet mine. Of course
He's being humble.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
I think he exceeded everybody's expectations.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess probably. Yes. But I mean, there's still, can he be a better or more efficient scorer? Yes. Can he protect the ball a little better, make better decisions with the ball? Yes.
For sure.
There's so much growth, but I guess all things being equal, yes, he did deliver for the most part. I guess the thing I'm having a hard time wrestling with is, how do you add this player and still lose 60 games? That's where I can't make that connection to make it make sense.
I got you. And I think that's a common theme from Spurs fans. I think they're over it. I think once they started, since the All-Star break, they're almost 500. They won 7 out of their last 11. Could have won 10 of those. Lost 3 close ones. Competitive in every game. But you go back to that 18-game losing streak early in the season, to your point. And Pop addressed it a little bit yesterday, was like, the question wasn't asked like, how could y'all have been so bad? But it was like, what took so long? And are you surprised that it took so long? And Pop's answer was, yeah, I should have known better. Like, when guys don't play together, it takes a while. And when you have a Vic that plays so differently, that they allowed to play outside early in the season with the Jeremy Sohan experiment. And I think Pop basically admitted that, yes, it was a mistake to play Victor outside. And yes, it was a mistake to have Jeremy. But you had to let that happen in order for them to see what they needed to become. Like, it's one of those things you can't tell Victor, we want you to go post up more. He has to fail and get frustrated, and then has success posting up, and then see that he needed to change.
Yeah, why, if you're the coach, you just tell the guy, this is what you're going to do. So I don't know. I think it's odd. And again, I don't remember a situation ever in our time covering the Spurs where you could have so many people saying one thing outside the organization, them doing another, and then ultimately doing what everybody outside the organization wanted them to do.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was calculated, and I think it was.
Yeah, maybe.
And maybe he's wrong for doing it, because we were all screaming at the TV, tell him to go inside. And we were all screaming at the TV, throw him the dang ball,
right,
teammates. But I think, I don't know, I think it was their strategy of, look, Victor came in, just like Manu. Victor came in, Pop was like, I want to see where you're comfortable. See, and it was a disaster. The guy was jacking up fall-away threes from the get-go, and he thought of himself as a 2-guard. And I don't know, maybe it pays off in the long run because you weren't a tyrant from day one and telling the kid to do something he didn't want to do. But to Victor's credit, he understood that he could be a much more efficient scorer inside, still shoot a few threes.
Yeah. There are going to be some opportunities for that, right?
And thank goodness that he's, as Zack talked about, those two really get each other. But I think Pop, it was a psychological ploy in a way to look, it's like when your kid learns to ride a bike, he's got to fall down a couple of times on his own.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just protect him all the way. And he had to kind of learn on his own that he wasn't a guard.
Is that Pop admitting that he messed up with Kawhi?
I think the Spurs have admitted that they messed up with Kawhi. For sure. Now, I think Kawhi and Uncle Dennis were more responsible, but I think the Spurs way, they were so used to guys like Manu and Tim and Tony falling in line with the Spurs way that they said, this is our way, and if you're not on board, you're out of here. And it cost them Kawhi. And I think they've learned, okay, with a guy like Vic, we're going to be communicative with his people and him every step of the way. That's why when they talked yesterday about will he be a part of the rebuild as far as having a say as to who they draft and who they trade for, you bet you know what they're going to consult with him.
Well, and he kind of danced around that question a little bit, didn't come out and say, when we went to a shoot around one time, he said, yeah, they're talking to me. Of course they are. And getting his input and everything like that. He didn't come out and say that, in so many words yesterday, but yeah, obviously they're including him in those conversations on what they're going to do in future.
They better be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you would think, right? If you have this guy as the pillar of your organization and you want to build around him, he should at least have some say, not saying all the say, but you for sure want his input on what he's looking for, guys that he likes or guys that he doesn't like.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of Spurs stars, Kawhi, Don, you were mentioning that, just how Kawhi and his uncle were, a little bit more, they had a heavy hand on what to say and do and stuff. Victor is more cut from the cloth of Tim, Manu, Tony, playing the Spurs way. And it was really interesting, just the dynamic. Pop kind of rolled the curtain back a little bit on just because they're learning what they're like, the first time just as people. And here's Coach Pop and Wemby just describing what their dynamic is like this first year.
React well to people who have a sense of humor and are willing to come back at me when I go at them with half humor, half confuse them. So they don't really know what I'm thinking. And he will come back at me the same way, so I don't know what he's thinking. So he's been fun to be around. He's very intelligent and very inquisitive. He's jumped in with both feet to be part of everything that we're doing. So having him around is not only added to our basketball IQ, but just the culture itself.
I'm just glad things are the way they are here because, he's there to poke on us, sometimes, or to correct us. He's just been great, and the dynamic is very good.
I don't know anything that's muted.
All right.
In other words, Wemby is the anti-Kawhi.
Right.
He's intelligent and communicative.
Well, and fitting right in. I mean, talk about the right. Y'all both said it, when he was drafted or when they won the lottery, Victor's going to fit right in. And this is just further proof of that.
Yeah. I mean, you could make the argument that again, the million zillion dollar shoe contract and logos and everything else. I mean, there's a machine behind him that wasn't behind Kawhi. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a whole different level that we're talking about right now with Victor, the entity.
And we do have some live comments coming in, and our man Cyber Bob is on duty with that. Cyber, what do you got?
We got a comment from the business office.
Ooh,
from Tom Guerrero.
I love that Tom listens every week.
He's listening on Facebook right now. Yeah. Oh, but his comment is that
Tom, shouldn't you be working and doing something productive? Luis needs his check, and Chuck needs his clothing allowance reimbursement.
You guys are getting paid. Not enough veteran players around him. Way too many young players not adjusting on how to play with him. And I think that's a great point, though. Do you guys expect bring some veterans in next year?
Well, and that kind of leads to the next topic. Okay, you guys are both sitting in GM Brian Wright's chair. What are you doing? Who's staying? Who's going? What moves are you making?
If you read the tea leaves and listen to Sean Elliott on the broadcast, you know that Sean's somewhat in the know. Sean just continues to say, big changes are coming. There's going to be a lot of changes. This roster is going to turn over. I don't know. Nobody knows what they're going to do. But I would think it would be a mix of young draft picks and or their own draft picks. I think they're going to wait and see where they fall in the lottery. Toronto's pick, all that. But I do think they understand that they've got to add some vets. It depends on who's available. And it depends on who's available this year and or next summer
cycle.
when guys like Donovan Mitchell are free or others. Apparently Darius Garland is gettable this offseason. I don't know if that's a guy they're targeting. He's an all-star. He's really good. But they're going to have to add that kind of thing, and they've got all the assets to do it. But I have no idea what or when they're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the conventional wisdom is that they've been pretty consistent losing the last 5 years. However, if you add what you think is a generational talent to the mix and still end up with 60 losses on the season, I think at some point you have to say, well, it's probably not Victor Wembanyama's fault that we won as many games as we did the year before. So I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there's some changes. The problem is who goes and who stays, who's available, all of those things. Plus, you've got, I think, 2 first-round picks coming in, right? And 2 seconds as we sit here right now.
1 first for sure, and Toronto's if it's not top 6.
So, you know, you can start with that. And are there going to be some guys out there when you draft that are going to instantly help you win more ball games?
Let me ask you guys this. If the season started today, based on what they've done in their last 15 games, do you think then we would be correct that they're a 38-40 win team?
Perhaps.
As constructed right now.
Yes.
I think fringe kind of like play-in team. They'd be playing in one of the play-in games maybe tomorrow.
I mean, to your point, and you know what you alluded to sort of earlier, I mean, we were breaking down the numbers about the All-Star break, and we were talking about how it worked against them even getting to as many wins as they got to last year based on strength of schedule. Well, they looked better when their schedule got tougher than previous. So I would have to argue, yes, that maybe we were closer to the win total if this current team, the way it played the last 6 weeks,
20 or so,
is closer to what we thought it would be at the beginning of the year than what it was ultimately when we were picking these things.
Yeah,
I think that's 100% accurate. That's as constructed, and they're going to hopefully improve the roster. They got to get better shooting. But here's to Chuck's point. In the last 20 games since the All-Star break, they've moved in most offensive and defensive categories from 28, 29, 30 to 12, 13, 15.
They're in the middle of the pack.
They've improved so much, even in their outside shooting. But their three-point shooting is ferocious. I mean,
and the effort was better, if we're being honest. I mean, baseline to baseline, both ends of the floor, offense and defense. They had more people playing harder for longer stretches of time than they did early on in the year, where there were too many guys looking at the rim, balls going off the rim, nobody going to get loose balls, you know, that kind of stuff.
I do think it's apparent that at some point in the season, there was a come to Jesus meeting in the locker room of, see the big guy? Give him the dang ball.
I don't think there's any question. I mean, we showed around the All-Star break, Zach, you went to the practice and shot a picture on the video board, and all the things that were on the video board were about being selfless and playing for the team.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if those were the things written on the board at the time, you know, it had nothing to do with X's and O's and making more shots. It had everything to do with being selfless and being a better teammate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. I think there was a problem. It was addressed, and I think the message was received in some part because of how they played down the stretch.
It's going to be an interesting offseason. Of course, the lottery up next. We'll see where the Spurs fall in that first round. 10.5% chance, I think. Somebody out on the Twitter sphere put that out there for the top 3 picks.
Tank.com.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. You know, light the candles once again. See if the Spurs can land up in that top 3.
Last year they had 13.5 and they won.
So
yeah, and I mean, kudos to the NBA, right? I mean, the way they done it with the math. there's no incentive to tank.
Yeah.
I mean, when it's a 14% chance that you get the number 1 pick if you have the worst record, and if you have the 5th worst record like the Spurs do, and it's 10.5,
Yep.
good on the NBA, because you should not incentivize these things, not when these picks are so precious.
Especially when the last 3 are equal, because it was always, we got to lose more than that guy.
Right.
But all 3 of the worst teams have the exact same, so it doesn't, help you to lose.
Last thing with the Spurs, and then we're going to be moving on real quick. Last week, or a week from yesterday, the Spurs have been snake bitten by injuries here lately. And there was one more against the game in the 76ers. Keldon Johnson came back, went down with another ankle, unfortunately. But before he did, he took a hunk out of Julian Champagnie. And yesterday, during the end of season interviews and everything, I got a chance to ask Keldon if Julian was giving him a wide berth a little bit still. And Keldon got to share his perspective of what happened that night.
All right, can we just? I'm glad you said that, because really he turned into me. Like, I didn't bite. Like everybody keeps saying I bit him. I didn't bite him. Like, he turned into my mouth. Paul. Oh my God. Y'all know what I meant. Like, he turned to me and hit me in the mouth. So like, I don't see why people keep saying I bit him. Like, I ain't bite him.
Why was your mouth open?
I was screaming like I'm always screaming. I feel like I'm always screaming no matter what. And when I have, like, I was just about to scream, like I was like, and then he hit me in the mouth. Like,
so Julian should have known better.
Yes, he should have known I was coming to scream. So now, like, when we got hype, like, I got to back off a little bit. I don't want no more incidents.
I think we can all say, as long as Keldon keeps his mouth away from Wemby, right?
It's all about spacing. It always will be about spacing, right?
Did anybody do the due diligence to find out if Julian had to have tetanus shots or anything?
We didn't get a chance to ask Julian, but that could be one for next season. Quickly, NBA playoffs. The play-in games start tomorrow. The West up first, and then Wednesday night it's the Eastern Conference. Quickly, your conference final picks. Who is reaching there? We have our seeds on our second page there, but OKC the top in the West, Boston the tops in the East. Who's reaching the conference finals, and then who is reaching the NBA finals?
Go ahead, Don, because I'm going to be wrong. So
I want to pick Denver, but they could face the Lakers in round 1 if the Lakers win that play-in game, and that's no easy. That's no easy road. I think Denver's the class of the West. They've got all you need to win a championship, every position, depth, shooting. I'm going to pick Denver. If I had to pick who's going to go against them, man, that Dallas Clippers series is going to be a lot of fun, first rounder. I think Phoenix gets it together. I think Phoenix makes a good run, but I'm going to take Denver to come out of the West.
Chuck?
Out of the West, I'm going to stay with Denver, but I'm pulling for OKC. I would like to see a young team that's doing it the right way kind of wreck things at this point. And again, shout out to the NBA, because this play-in stuff, like, it's got my attention. You got those 2 games in the West. Sign me up for that. And I mean, if Golden State somehow wins their game against Sacramento, do you want to play them right now? I mean, they've won 8 of their last 10. They've got, most of those guys have skins on the wall. I mean, do they have enough to beat some of these other teams? I'm not really sure, but I'll stay with Denver until, I probably just jinxed them, by the way. But
right.
And then coming out of the East, it has to be Boston. But how much pressure is there on the Bucks to win it all?
True.
Right. I mean, there's a lot at stake for them.
Give me Denver and Milwaukee. I think that should be fun. And yeah, but the West is going to be, the Western side of the playoff bracket is going to be a lot of fun to watch, just the matchups and everything.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. All right. So UTSA Spring Game, moving on to our next topic that was held this weekend. Got to see a lot of new fresh faces. Of course, everybody's eyes on Owen McCown and Eddie Lee Marburger at the quarterback position. Both played, fairly well. It seemed like moving the ball. It was kind of rough going at start, but they got things going a little bit, and some local guys also making some big plays. Justin
Rodriguez.
Justin Rodriguez. I had it down here.
10th year senior.
Yeah, J-Rod from Johnson High School, and then Justice Hurt from Taft High School hauled in a touchdown grab from Jackson Gilkey. So who stood out to y'all just from the UTSA Spring Game?
Well, I mean, I think the quarterback play, like Eddie Lee, I think got everybody's attention,
Yeah.
right? When we thought maybe that Eddie Lee was just a system guy and maybe a guy that, maybe people had high hopes for 2 years ago, but had kind of forgotten about him. I mean, he's got a quick release, seemed pretty accurate with it, looks pretty confident back there moving the team.
Kind of seemed like he lost the number 2 job last year because Owen played in the bowl game and Owen played against Tennessee and played well. But yeah, I thought Eddie Lee was, I mean, if I had to call it even, honestly, I think Eddie Lee was a tad better than Owen.
And the freshman,
Jackson Gilkey.
Freshman, Jackson Gilkey did some nice things too.
He's really athletic and can really run. But the guy that just jumped off the tape better than anybody out there was J.J. Sparkman, the transfer wide receiver from Texas Tech. I mean, he'll make you forget about DeCorian Clark, and that's saying something because this kid's 6'4", physical, strong, made some great catches that were tough in traffic.
I ain't forgetting about DeCorian Clark. I hope he comes back. JT, we're pulling for you.
And they
missed a pro prospect right there, man. We're not going to forget about him anytime soon.
They really missed Kavorian Barnes and 2 other running backs. That's why Justin got to play. But Kavorian will be ready by the start
by the fall. Yeah. They're shaping up to be another strong squad again, so it's going to be fun when they reconvene in the fall. Of course, tomorrow that's when the spring transfer portal opens, and that mythical entity that it is. Jeff Traylor, of course, taking a different stance on that this year. Here was Coach Traylor after the game explaining just what his approach is when this transfer portal opens up tomorrow.
The most important players on our team are on our team. Those recruits, I love them. I want them, but I want my guys in my locker room the most. So we're going to make sure they're eligible and still want to play for the Roadrunners. And that's what I'll be doing for sure the next 2 weeks. And then the next, month, we'll make sure they're passing their classes.
Sure sounds like it's like we're going to stick with the guys we know instead of, trying to fill out with, it's like, okay, whoever's out there, come on.
I think there's a little wink there too, though, because he's got 5 scholarships still in his back pocket, and there's going to be some Longhorns, Aggies, Texas Tech kind of guys that go through their spring game, don't get playing time, writings on the wall, and they're going to want to transfer. Just like J.J. Sparkman, he's going to be there. That's why he doesn't give out all his scholarships. And he was clear, he got, the recruiting classes ranked, and people go, oh, UTSA didn't have a good recruiting class in the American because they're ranked below 10 other teams or whatever. He didn't give out that many scholarships, but he kept guys from transferring out. He said, why don't you get credit for that? Plus, he's got 5 in his back pocket, so they're not done yet.
That's what you do with those guys that come in anyway. How many I think maybe almost a better metric is how many games do these recruiting classes end up winning, once their time is said and done, at whatever program they end up at.
Right. And then, it's just like you can use Eddie Lee as a prime example, right? I mean, these guys could leave, but they don't. There's something about competing at the place that you're at. And that means something. And it means something to the guys that are coaches at these places too. Guys could leave, but they don't. Why don't they? Aren't those ultimately some of the guys that you want on your team? I mean, they're fighting to get on the field where they are, but it's hard to ignore the portal in any sport. I mean, look at UConn. You just reload, or look at what Texas State's done. What GJ's done, not only there, but also at UIW, just recruiting the transfer portal, or not recruiting it, but using the transfer portal. So hopefully they're not recruiting the transfer portal.
It's crazy that they have now, just like an NBA team, they have a full staff. They have a general manager. They have scouts. They have guys just assigned to the portal. And to know what every player who's in the portal, what his numbers are, what he looks like on tape, they do recruit the portal. And they have guys scouting the portal. And they know about the kid that's playing at Texas Southern or whatever that's going to go up. And they know his numbers. And as soon as it opens and he goes in, they go after him. And you know what's interesting? The players recruit the teams as much as the teams recruit the players.
Yeah, it's a two-way street.
They call them, Coach, I want to come play there. You got a spot for me.
The Wild West of college football these days, and the way it is with NIL. And quickly, we're closing out here. We mentioned it at the top, the Masters. What a fun weekend watching golf. And Scottie Scheffler putting on his second green jacket in 3 years. I mean, the guy's just at the top of his game right now. Won't put Tiger comparisons on there yet because, I mean, he's got a long way to go before that. But
It's 15-2.
right, yeah, he is. But Scottie, if he continues this play, and especially with this putter change that he made, switching to the mallet, if he continues with that, man, look out.
That's your problem, Chuck. You just got to switch to the mallet.
I knew it was something.
That'll be it. Fix it everything.
There's some other clubs in there that got need fixing
Gotta
as
get
well.
straightened out.
You know, I'm curious though too. Like, is the PGA where it was even 5 years ago with this LIV stuff? You know, I mean, if you're good and if you're great, like Scheffler is, I mean, the dude's won 3 tournaments in his last 9 starts, something like that, 8 starts,
somewhere around there.
I mean, so if those LIV guys had not defected, you know, how good or how many tournaments would Scheffler have won, all things being equal? But again, I know it's looking at Cindy Crawford's face and looking at the mole, but dude's pretty damn special, man.
I never had heard that one before.
Well, that's a oldie but goodie, man. Come on.
Something else of note, and Don, I think you touched on this last night. After Scottie, the guys who finished, you know, in the top 10 of the Masters, Ludwig Oberg, Tommy Fleetwood, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, and Cameron Smith. All of those guys got to start here in San Antonio at the Valero Texas Open before going and playing in the Masters.
Yeah.
So I know Larson Segerdahl talked about it. These guys wanting to tune up and sharpen their game before going to Augusta. There's the proof in the pudding right there.
And Oberg, man, 24-year-old Texas Tech kid from Sweden.
He played very well.
He's on his way up.
First time around on the Masters track.
Yeah, first major ever. And I think he and Victor Hovland, too, are just 2 young studs that are going to be fun to watch for years to come.
Amen.
All right. Well, that sounds like it's going to wrap it up for us today, episode 92. Thanks so much for tuning in and checking us out. Be sure to like and subscribe, download wherever you get your podcasts. Matt will be back with you here next time again after his vacation. Until next time, have a good one, everybody.